Milý Michal, vážená pani viceprezidentka, dear colleagues, as the rapporteur for the review of the waste limits for the persistent organic pollutants, I'm very proud of what we have achieved in the ENVI committee, but also of the great support from all the major groups. I would therefore like to thank all my colleagues who are supporting low, responsible limits for the content of the POPs in the waste. And we are not talking about some nice chemicals. These are some of the worst chemicals known to mankind. And examples, we're talking about PFAS, forever chemicals. We're talking about dioxins, DDT. And unfortunately, even years after restrictions, after we banned these chemicals, we still find them in the water, we still find them in the products, in the toys that our kids play with, or in the breast milk of the new mothers. That is why the International Stockholm Convention requires parties, including the European Union, to prohibit and/or take legal and administrative measures necessary to eliminate, and I'm highlighting eliminate, going down to zero, both the production and the use of chemicals listed in the Annex A and their import and export. Why? Because they are persistent. They're forever. They don't really break apart. And the limits are there because we have to have some limits, but ultimately they are also bioaccumulative. They are growing up in the food chain, and we are on top of the food chain. A recent report from the scientists who concluded that the chemical pollution has now passed the safe limits for humanity is indeed and should be a global wake-up call. Therefore, what we decide during this review and with the other co-legislators will have an impact on public health and environment. It will have impact beyond national and European boundaries, as the waste limits also influence what we dispose in third countries, especially in developing countries. That is also why African countries are desperately asking the EU to adopt low limits, because they see it as a light at the end of the tunnel to limit pollution to their own environment from the waste that we dump there. The limits that we adopt decide whether to allow those dangerous chemicals to enter our lives through waste. Adoption of the ENVI report means that clear no to toxic economy, clear no to toxic recycled material, because these are waste limits, but don't think of waste, think of resource for the circular economy. We don't want circular economy that contains toxic chemicals. So I hope that tomorrow we will defend the result from the Environmental Committee, and it will help to free our economy from pollution, increase the trust of our citizens in recycled materials and products. This is absolute precondition for circular economy. I believe that this will be the case, as our report is ambitious, but also realistic at the same time. The limits that we propose are within the impact assessment of the Commission, and the Commission said that it is technically and economically feasible. Therefore, there is no reason why not to adopt lower limits that the Commission proposed. As a step forward towards a toxic-free future, my ENVI report proposes to adopt a limit of 200 milligrams per kilogram of the sum of PBDEs, brominated flame retardants, with the review to lower it further in the next 5 years, 200 milligrams for the HBCDD, with the review to decrease it to 100 milligrams in 5 years, considerably lower limits for dioxin and furans, thresholds for the PFOA to reflect the commitment in the chemical strategy for sustainability to reduce the contamination by the PFAS that sadly many people are affected with, limit of 420 milligrams per kilogram for short-chain chlorinated paraffins, and we are also adding a new group of fluorinated substances that will be soon listed, and soon by I mean early June, to the Convention. Last but not least, we address the incoherence between the classification of all waste containing old and new POPs to ensure effective treatment of all POPs waste. I hope that by adopting the report tomorrow, we, European Parliament, will stand behind the public interest. And I hope that we get a strong mandate for the negotiations in the trialogue. It will not be easy, but I can promise you we'll do the best. Thank you very much.